Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the Free Think Dojo. I think one of the hardest lessons in life that I learned was that being a people pleaser and sacrificing parts of yourself to make someone else's situation better is not always going to be a sustainable act. When I was growing up, I was always taught to treat others the ways that I would want to be treated. And I took that in a sense of I would want to help people and create relationships by helping and supporting others, hoping that I would receive that in return as well. Now, personally, I don't feel like that is too much to ask for. I feel like if you give something to someone, then you should receive a reciprocal relationship and get something back in support from them. But there's been a few breaking points in my life where that idealism has been totally wrecked. I've been in certain situations where I did sacrifice a lot and it almost depleted who I was and all the energy that I had to give. And at the end of the day, when I was asking for support and was trying to find a way to salvage my way back, I was met with crickets. So today in the dojo, I thought I would give some personal insight on being a people pleaser and my experiences with it. But also, I wanted to talk about how I ended up coming out stronger after the fact. I've mentioned in my videos before a little bit about my upbringing. It wasn't anything special. I had two parents, a brother, and that was pretty much it. I grew up with a very basic family that was very conservative. We were religious, and it wasn't something that at the time I thought was damaging or was going to really shape me to be a certain way, if that makes sense. I also grew up in a very religious area. I had a lot of friends that had very strong faiths, and I went to church. I had religion growing up in my family. So there was never a time where we were taught anything different from the basic idealisms of treating people with respect and, helping others in your community. Those messages were so prevalent throughout my childhood that I started to develop this sense of, wanting to help, doing anything that I could, and even sacrificing myself to help someone in need. Now, you're probably looking at that and saying, well, that's not necessarily a bad thing to want to help people and sacrifice yourself to help others. And I would agree with you. I do not inherently think it is a bad thing to think that way. But what I started to realize when I had, girlfriends in school and friends in school, and I was always over the top trying to do nice things and, try to help them if there was a problem, I realized that I was doing too much. It all boiled down to just wanting to be on good terms with someone. So I would literally sacrifice anything that I could to reach that level. And whether it was a girlfriend that wanted me to do something that maybe I wasn't fully comfortable with, but I knew it would make them mad if I didn't, I kind of would just go along with it. The same with friends. If they wanted me to go, get on top of the high school that was, being monitored and possibly get me in trouble, I would consider doing it just because I wanted to stay on good terms with them. It was also prevalent within my family, which was very complicated because I knew I didn't have to do much for them to love me, but I feel like I needed to put more into the effort from my end as their child to make sure that nothing bad would happen. It was almost as if I was constantly trying to find validation or security with my relationships. So I felt like I needed to throw myself aside pretty much and make sure that they were on top and I was able to support them from underneath. And let me tell you, it was very taxing. There were many times that I was just drained. I felt like I could give nothing else in the relationship and was more numb to it at the end of the day. But I think it was also a mental game as well, because when I felt this sense of energy lacking and I felt like I couldn't support them the ways that I wanted to, I had this confidence issue. I had this issue of security to where I felt like if I stopped giving the amount of effort I was, then I would lose them. Now, the whole problem with this situation is that it was never actually proven that the people I was in these relationships or friendships with were actually expecting this amount of effort from me. It was almost as if I created this problem and this issue within my own head because there was nobody out there that was demanding this effort from me. They weren't demanding this people pleaser personality because they didn't need it or they weren't even paying attention to it. I feel like most of it would stem from just certain pinpoints within my life, being very competitive growing up, being the youngest child and having to kind of fight for attention in a sense. But it could also be tied into times where I was bullied as a kid as well. There were times where it really affected my confidence and people made me feel less of myself. So I feel like I needed to dig within and bring out more effort to be the person that they wanted to be. And let me tell you, that did a lot more damage than anything else. At a certain point, I realized that this was not sustainable. Throughout my college years, I had relationships and friendships where I continued to try and put as much effort that I could into those, but it became less and less over time. I did not have the energy reserves to keep pushing everything I could, putting all my emotions into something and reacting to everything and putting all my sacrifices together to help someone. And I can't tell you exactly when it happened, but then I just stopped. In a sense, I just stopped caring. I stopped caring about my effort on my end. I didn't want to put any more into it. I was so broken and bent and just exhausted from all those years that I just wanted to stop pretending that I was okay. Now, at this time, I didn't do anything dramatic. I just stopped texting my friends. I stopped reaching out to my family. I stopped trying to find a relationship. I just stopped. Now, at that time, I realized something was wrong. I realized that being this people pleaser for years had drained me to a point that if I wasn't careful, I would never be able to dig myself out of. At that time, I decided to remember who I was and focus on myself for a little bit. I decided to focus on my hobbies and focus on things that I enjoyed, learn new things, and try to find the balance within my life again. I still had people that reached out to me and I still had conversations and met people and, tried to go forward with it, but I just stopped putting more effort than I needed to. If you asked me, I think what happened is I just broke. I think the part of me that was that people pleaser just had enough. And luckily, I was strong enough to realize my value as a person at the time to where I was able to kind of pick myself up without a dramatic ending or a dramatic situation and just kind of go forward. For the people that never met me halfway with all my effort, I just stopped. I realized that I could not meet their expectations, but I also could not keep that act up anymore. So if they reached out to me, I would obviously give them what I could, but I stopped giving them everything. I stopped putting so much emotion into it all, and I stopped putting so much into my help and wasting it on situations and people that would not be there if I needed them. The biggest lesson that it taught me was to not expend yourself for the sake of others. It is always important to be charitable and help others in times of need. But if we're talking just being yourself and creating relationships and friendships, you should never give up parts of yourself if it means you can be friends or in a relationship with somebody. It's not worth it. People that truly want to be around you and be connected to you will accept you for what you can provide and who you are as a person. You shouldn't have to give more than what you can to please them. I also have to give thanks to my fiance. She has been great in accepting who I am and bringing in the effort that I have to give at this point. And it's also helped me heal a little bit. It's made me realize my worth again. And it's also made me realize what I am able to give, but also what I'm not able to give. Once again, it brings me one step closer to balancing out my life. And balance is the key to living a fulfilling life. So if it's going to help me get closer to the center of myself and help me develop stronger relationships and just be happier in life, I'm going to keep going. Let me know down in the comments if you guys have had any similar experiences with being a people pleaser. I know my story's a little dramatic, but I also just have a lot of emotion tied to it because it was a very hard part of my life that went on for a very long time. But when I broke it, I was very glad to see the results that came from it. So if you've experienced something similar, would love to see how it helped you as well to break that cycle. Once again, I appreciate everybody sticking around in the dojo with me today. Remember to subscribe to the channel for more content like this, like the video, and share it with your friends to grow the dojo. And I'll talk to you guys next time.